Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea podcast here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. Thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday. Really eventful evening I had last night. A couple of things. Number one, Burbank is on fire. I think you might have seen, if not, it's on my channel, the video that I made last night of just how close the fire is to my neighborhood and the glow you could see. Burbank is burning currently. I guess the firefighters overnight, though, have managed to protect most of the homes. So, if not all the homes, so I mean, that's a real big step in the right direction. The fire's still burning, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a major threat to, inhabited areas. It's still close. You can still see it out from my street, but everything seems to be fine right now. Now, while Burbank was burning, I took a hop, skip, and a jump. Me and Ann went down to the Hollywood Bowl last night. One of the best places in the world to see a show is the Hollywood Bowl. It's just unbelievable. The venue itself is great, but the surroundings and what you're surrounded by in Hollywood is just amazing too. A great outdoor venue. And we have an annual tradition that we go and watch John Williams in concert. He comes down with the Los Angeles Philharmonic and they do all of his, not all of his stuff, but they do tons of his movie scoring and all that kind of stuff. And it was absolutely fantastic. You can see some pictures here that we did, as well as this little bit was really exciting. And you can probably tell from the video footage there that it's become a tradition at these things that people bring their light up lightsabers. And when John Williams starts to play some of his Star Wars stuff, people break out their lightsabers and everybody has a grand time. Well, anyway, now it is Saturday. It's time for us to jump into some stuff. I've picked out 6 topics that you guys have sent in to me. How do you send in a topic or a question to the John Campea podcast? It's simple. Just email me anytime at the John Campea podcast at gmail.com. Send on in your topics. I'll pick out 6. You can look in the description of this video to see a little preview. And you'll notice that a couple of questions I've picked out from my Patreon supporters. You know, since I left the corporate overlords and I decided not to work for corporations anymore, that means I'm doing this full time in Los Angeles, and living in Burbank is an expensive place to make 70 to 100 videos every single month. And I've got a whole bunch of people that help support me making these videos. Check out this link for my Patreon page to get some more information on that. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the first topic today. And the first topic today comes to us from one of the aforementioned Patreon supporters. It comes to us from Ash Cartwright, who writes, in the announced Justice League Dark film, do you think it's possible to cast Matt Ryan as John Constantine, even though he has already portrayed him in this year's animated film, his short-lived TV show, and the Arrow crossover? I know DC likely doesn't want any crossover between their TV and film worlds, but it seems like Matt Ryan is a perfect fit for the role. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And you know what? I'll admit, I've never been a big fan of the John Constantine character. I wasn't that big on I know a lot of my friends really enjoyed the Keanu Reeves version of Constantine. It didn't quite work for me. I've never been into all that stuff, like either with, Justice League Dark or Constantine himself. But Matt Ryan playing Constantine in the TV show, the short-lived TV show, he was great in the role. Even though I didn't like the show very much, I thought the pilot was great. But then after I watched the pilot, I watched the second episode, and they totally changed the show. They completely changed the show. They changed the tone of the show. They changed one of the main supporting characters of the show. They took out one of the main storylines that was introduced in the pilot, then threw it out, decided to go in a different direction, and I just couldn't get into it. I mean, I watched all the episodes, but I just never got into it. I never thought it was great. But despite that, I agree with you. I actually thought, playing the role of Constantine, I thought Ryan did a really good job. And I was really happy to see him pop up in Arrow, reprising the role as Constantine. So, that being said, what do we think about him maybe playing the role of Constantine in the movie universe? Well, there are a couple of problems with that. Let me start with one of the things you said. He's a perfect fit for the role. Yes, but that doesn't mean there aren't 20 other people who would also be perfect fits for the role. Remember, we only think he's the only guy who can do it because he's the only guy we've seen other than Keanu Reeves. He's the guy we've seen, so he's our point of reference. And so what I find is a lot of times film fans, what we do is, since I've seen this guy in the role, that means that's now my template, and so he's the perfect guy. It's like, well, maybe, but maybe there's like 15 other people who you would have thought was even better. You just haven't seen them yet. So while I agree, he's great in the role as Constantine, I like him very much, he's not the only guy who can do it. There's lots of other people who can do it. And obviously then the big problem, Warner Brothers has already clearly established the television world and their movie world are two different things. If they're going to have one guy play the Flash, Grant Gustin play the Flash in television, and have Ezra Miller playing Flash in the movie version, you can't suddenly start picking and choosing. Well, some people will cross over in both and some characters we won't. You got to stay consistent. And I know a lot of people right now are jumping up with the whole multiverse thing. It's like multiverse can't be the answer to everything. So I think they've made it pretty clear they want to keep their TV and their movie universes separate. And because of that, it would just not make any sense to use Ryan when there are lots of other actors out there who would also do a really good job in the role. So yeah, I'm going to disagree with you. As much as I love him, I want to see him pop back up. I would love to see him become a series regular, like jumping in and out, back and forth between a lot of the other DC shows. I'd love to see his Constantine show up in Legends of Tomorrow and then show up for maybe a 2-episode arc in Flash and show up in another 2 or 3 episode arc for Arrow and then maybe show up in Supergirl, I don't know, and have him move around in there. I would love to see him more regularly, but if you're going to do a movie version of him, then you got to get a new actor. And honestly, I don't know what the chances are that we're actually going to get that Justice League Dark. I mean, they've talked about it for a long time, but there's a lot of films WB and DC have talked about that never came to fruition. And then they had Doug Liman on to direct, and Doug Liman's left. Then they had Muschietti lined up, the guy who's directing the It film, but now it looks like he's not going to be doing it anymore because he's going to stay with the It franchise. They're probably going to do a sequel because it looks like It is going to blow up at the box office. So they just hired a guy like 3 or 4 days ago to do another rewrite. So clearly Warner Brothers hasn't given up on Justice League Dark. It's still on their schedule, but I have my doubts it's actually going to happen. Who knows? I wouldn't put money on that. I'm just saying I have my doubts. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, Ash. We move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Lauren Priputen, who writes, with Disney's announcement that they will be parting ways from Netflix and opening their own streaming service in 2019, what do you think the future will have in store for Netflix? If this becomes a successful move for Disney, I can see other companies such as Sony, Fox, and Universal following in their footsteps and pulling away from Netflix too. Will Netflix eventually become a place for only their original content? Or could this cause the demise of a great streaming service? Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. And ever since Disney made that announcement, I guess it was about a week or so ago, that in 2019, they're launching their own digital streaming entertainment service. And really, from Disney's point of view, if you put yourself in Disney's shoes, why not? I mean, that makes sense. It just makes sense. You've got tons of popular content. Why do you need to split the pie with some third-party company that you don't need? Now, don't get me wrong. As a consumer, I would much rather be like one service, Netflix, that just is a home for everything. And all I got to do is pay one flat fee for one service and I get everything. But if I'm going to be honest, if I put myself in Disney's shoes, it would be very attractive. It would be a very attractive idea to take all my really popular content and just do my own streaming service. And I've got some theories about that new streaming service in Star Wars that I'll talk about in another video. But I'm very excited about it, but I'll talk about it in another video. Look, when Netflix started developing their own television programming, their own movies, things like that, I believe they were preparing themselves for the future. Number one was about their competition with HBO, which is a great competition. HBO, Netflix, both produce fantastic content. But I remember the CEO of Netflix saying once, we need to become HBO before HBO becomes Netflix. And think about that for a second. It was a brilliant statement, and they clearly got the jump on it. But I also believe that the reason Netflix started diving so heavily on developing their own original content was to start to prepare for the future. Like right as Netflix, without their own original content, Netflix is completely at the mercy of content creators allowing their content and wanting their content to be on Netflix. They were being very successful, but still, they were at the mercy of all the other content creators out there. Because Netflix, without their original programming, Netflix was just a depository for other people's stuff, right? Netflix knew building your entire business philosophy being 100% reliant on outside forces like other studios and other companies, when your whole business strategy is 100% built on being reliant on all these other companies for their content, that's not a long-term business plan. So what Netflix did was they dove headfirst into creating their own original content, their own hit programming, stuff like that, in a way to kind of future-proof themselves. So that if the day did come, and I think they knew it was going to come, that a company like Disney would start their own streaming service, that maybe a company like Fox would start their own streaming service, that CBS launches their own streaming service, which they already have. When that starts to happen, Netflix as a company has prepared themselves by not only being a great depository for old television programming and old movies and things like that, yes, but they've insulated themselves by having their own content. A lot of people now subscribe to Netflix, not for all the old TV shows and some of the old movies they like to watch. A lot of people subscribe to Netflix so they can watch House of Cards. A lot of people subscribe to Netflix so they can watch Netflix's original programming. And that was Netflix future-proofing themselves. Look, will Netflix change over the coming 4 to 5 years? I have no doubt there's going to be a tectonic shift with what Netflix is. But I believe Netflix has taken all the right steps and taken all the right moves to future-proof themselves, to make themselves their own standing content creation company, as opposed to somebody else's content depository. They've done a great job. Now, how much all the other studios will start just gathering up all their shows, or whether or not other studios will allow their programming to be on their streaming service and a third-party service like Netflix, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think Netflix is going to be going anywhere. I do think the landscape is going to change, but I think Netflix has taken steps to make sure that they can survive it and thrive in it. But we'll have to see how it all turns out. Maybe I'm dead wrong. It's been known to happen. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Gersinho Suarez, who writes, "The last few weeks, I've been watching the box office numbers of Despicable Me 3. It's now over $975 million worldwide. Is it fair to ask that at some point, Pixar and Dreamworks could be dethroned by Illumination Entertainment in terms of box office performance?" Well, thanks a lot for the question. You know, yeah, like a lot of people, I kept telling people, like everybody's saying, oh, Despicable Me 3 was a bomb. And I'm like, what movie are you following? Because, you know, the last time I checked, Despicable Me 3 was like over $850 million. Now it's crossed $900 million, closing it. I don't think it'll hit a billion, but it's closing in on $1 billion. It's done great. Now, Despicable Me 3 is the worst of the franchise. It's the first Despicable Me film I have not liked. I really like number 1. I really like number 2. 3 was not good. It has moments, but overall, not good. And I think that will affect Despicable Me 4, because I think people are going to start to lose their patience with the franchise. But whatever, it still make a lot of money. Secret Life of Pets. Secret Life of Pets, very quietly, very quietly, went on to make over $800 million at the box office. It did great. However, they've also had some not great outings, but so has everybody, including Pixar. I mean, yeah, Pixar most recently, their film Cars 3 only made like 300-something million worldwide. For a Pixar film, that's not great. But I believe the film they put out before that was Finding Dory, which crossed the $1 billion mark. So I wouldn't say we're in a position yet, especially because the quality of Illumination films have been nowhere near the quality of Pixar. You know, Cars 3 is an exception. Cars 3 was a stinker. But, you know, Despicable Me 3 was a stinker as well, despite the fact that it made tons of money. So I think right now, because people know Pixar make the better films, if you just go out there and you took a census, so I put out polls, I guarantee you, the general feeling out there is that Pixar puts out better product. And I don't think anybody would disagree. I mean, some people may think that Illumination puts out a better product, but even they, I don't think would disagree that the general perception of the average movie-going public is that Pixar puts out the better product. So considering that Pixar is still putting out movies that's making 800 million, a billion, 900 million, on top of the fact that everybody generally assumes that Pixar puts out better product than anybody else in the space, I think it's still safe to say Pixar still sits on the throne. However, we are never more than 2 or 3 movies away from that totally changing. If Illumination puts out a couple of movies in a row that both hit $1 billion, and if Coco comes out flat, and doesn't work, and their next film after that comes out flat and doesn't work, then this could be a totally different conversation. Just like that. Could be a totally different conversation. For right now, though, I still feel pretty good at calling Pixar king on the throne. King of the North, all right? Anyway, all right, thanks a lot for the question, man. We move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Trenton Perry. And Trenton Perry writes, I wanted to know your insight on the logistics of why Marvel's Netflix shows are not crossing over or even being mentioned by the ABC shows and vice versa. From a storytelling perspective, none of these shows' protagonists are doing that good of a job if they don't know that the other exists. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Trenton. And it comes back down again to the same old argument that I keep having to try to lay out. Yes, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. clearly exists in the MCU. Yes, on paper, the Netflix universe shows Defenders, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist. Did I mention everybody? I think I mentioned it. Luke Cage is somebody I mentioned. Punisher is coming out here soon. They, on paper, they also exist in the MCU. So while that's true, yes, they all exist in the MCU. However, I don't know how clear they need to be. The Netflix shows are treated as a completely separate thing. Yes, on paper, they'll mention the incident once a season. I think in season 1 of Daredevil, somebody made a joke about Captain America's shield. But that's it. On paper, it's in the MCU. In reality and in practical terms, the Netflix shows are treated as their own completely separate thing. It's like this. Technically speaking, the Queen of England is still the head of government of England. Technically speaking, on paper. But that's not the way the government of England functions. Really, she has no say. I mean, she's a powerful influence and there's certain legal things she could do. Yes. But really, practically speaking, the government of England is run by the government. It's not run by the Queen, right? Technically speaking, the Queen is still the head of government of Canada. But in practical terms, she has nothing to do with the running of the government of Canada. So, and that's kind of the illustration I make about the Netflix show's place in the MCU. Yes, on paper, they're in the same universe, but they are treated completely separately. Like, I'm sorry, like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the whole Inhumans epidemic was a worldwide thing. Like if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the whole world's talking about the Inhumans problem, the Inhumans problem. Do you ever hear the word Inhumans ever mentioned once in any of the Netflix series? Do you ever hear that even mentioned or referenced at all? No, because on paper, it's in the MCU. In practical terms, it's not. It's totally different. You will never see Agent Coulson pop up to help Jessica Jones. You'll never see Luke Cage drop in to help the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. take down a Hydra nest. It's not going to happen. I mean, anything can happen in the future. Like Disney decides to pull the Netflix series out. They decide to retool everything. But as things stand right now, they're totally different. Yes, I get it. On paper, they're all in the MCU. But in practical terms, they are treated completely differently, completely separately. That's why you don't see Iron Man showing up in Hell's Kitchen when even a supervillain shows up. No mention of the Avengers. No mention of any superheroes. No mention of the Spider-Man that's been in New York City. Didn't hear him mentioned in the Defenders at all because they treat him as if it's a separate thing. They treat him as if he's not there. And you know what? Good. that I like it that way. I like the fact that the showrunners of the Netflix shows are not handcuffed to the MCU. They can do whatever they want and they don't have to worry about it. And I appreciate that. So that's why you never see it. And I don't think you're ever going to see it, at least as long as things stay the way they are. Things could change and things could shift and that could change a lot of stuff. But as things are, it's not going to happen. All right, we move on to the next question of the day. And the next question today also comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters. This one comes from Ben Rayner, and Ben Rayner writes, big fan of yours and glad to help you out on your channel. Thank you so much, Ben. Question: what trilogy do you like better in your opinion? The Matrix Trilogy, one incredible movie, one meh movie, and one terrible movie. Or the Wolverine Trilogy, one incredible movie, one meh movie, and one terrible movie. I am curious to hear your thoughts. You know, at first, I'm going to admit something, Ben. At first, when I read it, I thought it's a stupid question. Then I looked at it, it's like, actually, no, that's actually a really interesting question when you really stop to think about it. Because you're right, both trilogies have their standout stars. Both trilogies have a movie that has redeeming qualities, but, you know, it doesn't have worldwide appeal or love. And each of the trilogies has a film that seems to be universally hated. And so that is a really interesting comparison. So everybody will have a different opinion about this, is which is the better overall trilogy, Matrix or the Wolverine trilogy? Here's the way I break it down in my head. Okay, which franchise has the best single film? I know I'm going to get a lot of people mad at me for this. I'm going to say Logan. I'm going to say Logan is the best film out of the 6. Don't get me wrong. Everybody, if you've heard me talk about The Matrix, you know I love The Matrix. The Matrix is awesome. Groundbreaking. It's incredible. But if I was going to go to a desert island for 1 year and I could take one movie with me and I had to choose between The Matrix or Logan, I'm taking Logan. I think I'm taking Logan. That's no disrespect to the Matrix movie. It's amazing, but I would have to give it to Logan. So in my assessment, Logan is the best single movie. However, the second Matrix film, I think, is better than the second or first Wolverine films. So obviously, number 1 would be Logan. Number 2 would be the original Matrix. Number 3 would be the Matrix 2. So I think the second Matrix film is better than the other 2 Logan films. And I believe that the Wolverine trilogy has the best movie, but I also believe it has the worst movie. I think that Logan movie, that Wolverine movie, that first Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine movie is the worst out of the bunch. Yes, I think it's worse than Matrix 3, and Matrix 3 is bad, but I think that Wolverine one is the worst. So I'm going to go overall, if I can only go to that desert island and take one trilogy with me, I think I'm taking the Logan trilogy. I think I'm taking Wolverine. If for no other reason than just for Logan itself, but I think overall, I'm going to give it to the Wolverine trilogy. I'm curious to know, what would you take? You had to go to a desert island for 1 year. You can take one trilogy with you. Matrix or the Wolverine. Which one are you taking and why? I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. And by the way, I'm saying I take the Wolverine trilogy. I can have my mind changed. Let me know. Jump into the comment section. Leave me your thoughts. All right. Now we move on to the final question of the day. And the final question today comes to us from Frank Mehrer, who writes, I'm a big fan of your show and I've been watching every day this month. Oh, thanks so much, Frank. I appreciate that. And I was looking at the numbers the Harry Potter films made in the box office, and I was wondering, with $7 billion worldwide, why wouldn't they announce a new trilogy if they make that much? Thanks a lot for the question, Frank, and you're asking a question a lot of Harry Potter fans have asked. It's not like Harry Potter finished out on a whimper. Harry Potter finished strong, not just at the box office, but quality-wise too. The Harry Potter franchise finished strong. And then they took a break. It's been a lot of years since we had a proper Harry Potter film. I'm not talking about the Newt Scamander movie. Obviously, that's in the Harry Potter universe, but a true Harry Potter movie. You know, so they walked away from it. Why haven't they now come back? It's been a number of years. Why not come back? What's holding up Warner Brothers? Why won't they come out and do more Harry Potter movies? 2 words. Joe Rowling, also known as J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, the author, the creator, the owner of Harry Potter, is the reason there have been no more Harry Potter movies. Don't think for a second that Warner Brothers, the CEO of Warner Brothers, wouldn't sacrifice his vice presidents on an altar of stone if he thought that would get J.K. Rowling to allow them to make more Harry Potter movies. They would. They would sacrifice their firstborn children. They would do whatever because it is that delicious franchise money. And people love it. And it's still got a diehard audience to this day. Warner Brothers would move on a Harry Potter movie just like that. No questions asked. They would move on it. However, J.K. Rowling was in a position of power and strength when she negotiated her deals. And she negotiated brilliant deals. She gets final say on everything, man. Like everything. And that's the deal she negotiated for herself. So good on her. And so then you might ask yourself, well, then why won't, with all the money that the Harry Potter franchise makes, why won't Rowling go ahead and let them make more movies with all the money she would make? You know why? Because she already has more money than she can spend in 10 lifetimes. There is literally nothing J.K. Rowling cannot do in this life if she wanted to. There's nothing she can't afford. If she wanted to go into space, she can go into space. She has enough money to do anything she wants. And writing books and writing novels and wanting to then protect your legacy and protect. So there will never be a Harry Potter thing that gets made that she doesn't directly oversee, write, and control. Why? Because she's very wisely, very controlling and very protective of her creation. All right. So she's got all the money in the world. She wants to be very protective of her legacy. She doesn't want Harry Potter to suddenly become some joke where now there's 5 Harry Potter spin-off TV shows and 5 this and all of a sudden the property, the intellectual property of Harry Potter devalues. And she's never going to let that happen. So if there's going to be more Harry Potter movies, it's going to be because she writes them and she's in control. That's a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work. And she's got all the money in the world. Look, I would love for her to write another true Harry Potter book. I know she put out that Harry Potter and the Something Child, whatever. Anne read it. I don't think she liked it very much, but I'm sure the audience would love another true Harry Potter book. I would love to see another Harry Potter movie. I would love to see a new Harry Potter trilogy that happens 10 years after the events of the last film and where they're all at this point. I think that would be fascinating. I think that would be great. But in asking the question, why don't they do it? One person stands in the way, and it's the creator. It's the owner. And you know what? She's earned the right to do whatever the fuck she wants with Harry Potter. And good on her. I hope she does another one, but if she doesn't, that's her prerogative and she's earned it. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for this installment of the John Campea podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, while you're here, why don't you take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following me on Facebook and Twitter, simply at John Campea. That'll do it for me, guys. I'll be back again tomorrow, and until then, bye-bye.